the narrative has always been that PC gaming is winning, that PC gaming is dominant, that PC gaming is the future of video games. And yet, inexplicably, we see storefront after storefront shut down, get sold off, and just fail to turn a profit. It's been a pretty open secret for a long time that Steam is essentially a monopoly when it comes to the PC gaming space. But what's especially interesting is when you get a rare behind-the-scenes look at what's actually happening in the space. Because if PC gaming was so healthy, if it was so vibrant, there would be competing storefronts. There would be other alternatives. They would be able to experiment with different services. They would give different things to customers. They would experiment with their business model. Like, you should be seeing a wide range of storefronts on PC. Because, of course, PC is not a specific platform. It is a piece of hardware that anybody could release storefronts on, and you can sell any kind of product on PC through the internet. And what's very, very interesting about this is seeing just how something, the number 2 PC gaming storefront in the world, good old games, getting sold off by CD Projekt Red, which is supposedly one of the biggest third-party developers in the world. Let me repeat that. CD Projekt Red is selling off good old games, which of course tells us a couple of different things. That, CD Projekt Red has no faith in PC gaming. That they would rather release their games on Steam as opposed to making them GOG exclusives. And it showcases just how tepid the PC gaming market is, where even owning a storefront is too cost effective for this is too costly for this company. CD Projekt Red is doing so poorly, they sold their store to one of their co-founders, some guy who's probably just going to just run it into the ground, probably. That's just the reality of the situation. We are seeing in real time CD Projekt Red selling off their assets to try and pay off their debts. They are trying to stay afloat after the massive failure that was Cyberpunk 2077. After the failure of Witcher 3, of Witcher 4, of the Witcher 1 remake. There is no going back for CD Projekt Red. They were hyped up to be the next major player in the RPG space, and in actuality, they got completely mogged by Nintendo and Pokemon. Okay, that's just the reality of it. No RPG franchise on the planet is as popular or successful as Pokemon. And so, with all that being said, with everything the industry has been doing, everything that normies have been trying to pull, with the with the coping and seething about PC gaming, this is a very transparent example as to how the hype around gaming PC is a complete and total illusion. Another good example is the rising cost of PC parts. Grums is talking about this, how, inflation and, rising costs is hitting PC parts so hard that now they are far beyond what they ever were. Already you were shelling out $2,000 for a PC that was just as good as a video game console. Now you have to go even further. Now, in the future, you're going to have to pay even more than that. Meaning that video game hardware, in spite of the claims from the PC Master Race, is not going anywhere. And, the age-old cope of just I'll just pirate that, when it comes to console-only releases, that is becoming increasingly untenable. Guys are going to prison. Dudes are getting enslaved by Nintendo. You have all these situations. Hardware is getting shut down. Modders are getting fined. Nintendo's going after these people hardcore. It is becoming impossible to maintain the illusion that PC gaming is in any way better than console gaming. And what's going to happen going forward is that I think console players are going to become more and more aware of the stereotypes when it comes to PC players. How they basically just play the same games we do. How there's no discernible upgrade. How the hardware is significantly more expensive. How piracy is not as easy, simple, or legal as they imply. How the PC Master Race has no equivalent to Nintendo games. How exploitive the PC market actually is. How latent microtransactions are. How common subscription fees are. How just pointless it is to own or play a gaming PC when you can just wait for the same game to come out on a Nintendo Switch. For a fraction of the price. PC gamers love to say that PC is more affordable than console, but that is a complete and total cope. And always has been, and always should be thought of as such. It is one of the most embarrassing copes we've seen in this community, is just this insistence that somehow spending thousands of dollars on hardware and then pirating games is somehow more affordable than buying a $450 piece of hardware and one game with it to start with, okay? Because realistically, you're not going to be playing like 12 games at once. I play 2 or 3 RPGs at once, and what ends up happening is that I'm sitting here for like 8 hours a night, like grinding through Baten Kaido's Origins and Tales of Graces or whatever. Like, for most people, one game on a $450 console to begin with is perfectly reasonable. And that's the issue that a lot of people just don't come to terms with, is that the PC Master Race is built on this idea that you buy a bunch of games on sale that you never play. That's the entire ecosystem. That's how Steam functions. That's the reality of it. Like, essentially what you're doing is buying decade-old games, adding them to your Steam library, and then never actually touching them. Like, all the while, Nintendo is putting out new, interesting, engaging games all the time. Going from Kirby Air Riders to Metroid Prime 4 to we're getting a Dragon Quest 7 remake next year. We're getting Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave at some point. There's just so many games coming out in the near future, pretty lengthy, long RPGs too, that it's very difficult for me to believe that the commonly held belief that Nintendo has no games on its platform is going to retain any kind of semblance of credibility going forward. For me personally, I feel as if Nintendo has beaten gaming, PC gaming. They've, they are bigger than Steam. They are doing all this stuff that just dominates, the entire industry. And we're still in this phase where the Western video game industry just doesn't want to admit it. You can look at the top 10 most profitable brands in the world now, and what do you see? Pokemon is $200 billion worth more than the number 2 spot, Hello Kitty. Mario's going to eclipse Star Wars in the next 30 years. You're going to see, more and more of these Nintendo brands start becoming more relevant, more popular over time by association. After the Zelda movie comes out, I would not be surprised if it finally eclipses Lord of the Rings in popularity. That's been a big thing I've been talking about, actually, is that we're on the verge of a lot of these smaller Nintendo IPs being bigger than the industry defined classics. Zelda is bigger and better than Lord of the Rings. Always has been. Mario's bigger than Harry Potter. We're starting to see all this carefully constructed bullshit. Avatar. James Cameron's Avatar. That's a really good example of something that was astroturfed into relevancy that no one cares about, that no one watches, nobody follows. It is remarkable how something say Pikmin has a more dedicated following than Avatar, because Pikmin is actually a creative idea. Pikmin has a lot of creativity behind it. Pikmin is able to do a lot with its world, its setting. It's able to grow and evolve. And we're seeing that now with Nintendo, where in the next 50 years they are going to become bigger than Disney. they are going to beat out the mouse, and that is something that like I think American audiences, especially older people, are just completely out of touch with. I grew up being told like about how Pokemon was this dying fad, and meanwhile, like second place isn't even close, like, and that's kind of what we're seeing now with the gaming industry. Like, everything I see locally, people I know, like, anybody who's like remotely interested in video games, like, generally prefers Nintendo games. Like, anybody who doesn't is playing like older games, on like Xbox or PlayStation that they just have lying around and just can't afford Nintendo or haven't taken the time to really like explore the brand. And that's not a mentality that's going to survive the next 10 to 20 years. It is kind of my my feeling on it. Like to me, what we're seeing is we're kind of seeing the same thing that happened to the Snoys, 10 years ago. Like, the PC Master Race are doing the same exact thing that the Snoys did like a decade ago, where they're talking about like, oh yeah, The Last of Us is the greatest game ever made. It's the Citizen Kane of gaming. It's PlayStation is the best selling console ever. Worldwide, this is the big deal. Nintendo's on the way out. It's only popular in America and Japan. The biggest markets for games worldwide. Like, oh, Nintendo's done. They're finished. Like, they can't compete with this. Sony's a way bigger company. In the 2000s, that was like a legit narrative. Was that like PlayStation and Xbox would destroy Nintendo simply by being like way bigger companies. And not only did that not happen, it was PlayStation and Xbox that were driven out of the industry. It's PlayStation and Xbox that aren't competitive, and PlayStation and Xbox that are on the way out. And what's happening now is that the people who are like religiously obsessed with the idea of hating Nintendo have moved on to PC and mobile and are now saying those are going to destroy Nintendo. And that's just so laughably stupid that you cannot take it seriously. Like, that is just so dumb that I just cannot take it seriously at all. I just don't want to hear it. I just don't want to like to know about it. I think it's just complete delusional because the reality is Nintendo's expanded outside of the hardware space. Like, they've become an IP focused company now. They are producing films. They are going to produce anime at some point. They've been producing manga for a long time. Honestly, the Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess manga, legit, real talk, is probably better than most major manga series I've been reading lately. Obviously, like, I have some personal favorites that I don't think it's quite as good as, but when it comes to like me being a Zelda fan and like reading this manga and like experiencing it and like really starting to like feel as if this thing was like it was just a masterfully well made manga in general that actually fixed a lot of problems I had with the original game. Obviously, like, there are some exceptions to that. Like, I can't stand the whole Link not being from Ordon thing. That's like the weirdest change to me. But like, when you have things like, Ganondorf having a bigger presence and having that conversation with Zelda about his motivations and stuff like that shit was like pure unadulterated Kino. And I'm very anxious to see like what the creators do going forward with Zelda. If we see like, we might see a point where like, the Zelda manga becomes legit successful in its own right, on par with major shonen franchises. Like, we'll have to see about that. Like, I personally don't see that happening for a wide range of reasons, but like, the possibility is there. Like, the Twilight Princess is such a step up from what they were doing back in the Ocarina of Time days. Like, it's possible they might get only better from here. Like, we're getting like the Zelda movie soon. So again, things like that, you don't see anything like that out of the PC Master Race. Valve is not experimenting in anything with gaming, okay? They're basically just the Walmart of the PC gaming front. Like, all they do is sell games for cheap on their platform, while Gabe Newell just kind of just buys yachts, buys yacht companies, and not really does do anything to kind of preserve his place in the industry. Like, he doesn't care. You know, like, this is the funny thing about Gabe Newell. And the thing that, like, you know, retards like Sandy Peterson and the rest of the industry don't understand. Like, he doesn't actually care about video games. Like, if he did, like, he would be trying to leverage Valve as, like, a major player on par with Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo. But the simple fact of the matter is, Gabe made his money and he's checked out. Okay, he's not doing anything. He's living on a yacht. He's just enjoying his declining years. Like, he's finished. He's just a complete nobody, and is just kind of going to die in obscurity, as opposed to, you know, spending his entire life trying to build some everlasting legacy with the PC. With the PC front. Like, we're essentially, and even hardcore PC Steam shills know this, when Gabe dies or retires, Steam's done. Like, they're just not competitive. They will instantly, like, raise their prices. The service is going to go to shit. Their entire organization is going to collapse. Because if you don't know, Valve is run like a dictatorship, while, like, Gabe kind of, like, runs everything, and then, like, everyone else is, like, completely equal. Like, you know, Gabe dying or retiring is going to throw that structure into chaos. You know, like, the entire Valve ecosystem will not be able to function without a leader, and that's just the reality you're going to see with Valve. You know, you are going to be shocked at how quickly Valve falls into irrelevancy after Gabe dies. And honestly, they're kind of already there. We're just kind of in this period where people are in denial about it, and it's not going to be too much longer where we see Valve go down the same path that CD Projekt Red has. You know, it's not going to be too much longer until we see, like, Valve start selling off of their assets, until they start making deals with console manufacturers, until they start kneeling to Nintendo. Like, the simple fact of the matter is, Valve has no ability to produce gaming hardware. They have no ability to establish their own IP. They are completely and utterly reliant on being the only game in town when it comes to digital distribution on gaming PC. You know, the simple fact of the matter is that now that consoles have caught up with digital distribution, now that console owners are more willing to buy digital, like, Steam's relevancy in the ecosystem is non-existent. Like, Steam is completely finished. Just like GOG, just like the Epic Game Store, you know, Steam is a complete joke, propped up only by nostalgic boomers.